7 men's stories, exciting entertainment.
The Lufthansa Heist of 1978, the most daring robbery in New York's history. On a cold December night in 1978, one of the most audacious and legendary robberies in American history unfolded. The crime shook New York City, a metropolis that was no stranger to violence and crime, but this time the stakes were higher than ever before. The target was the Lufthansa cargo terminal at John F. Kennedy International Airport, a place where millions of dollars in cash and jewelry were stored, awaiting shipment to Europe. However, on that fateful night, these riches would never leave the ground. The Lufthansa Heist, as it came to be known, was not just a robbery. It was a carefully orchestrated operation by the New York Mafia, a criminal syndicate that had its claws deep in the city's underworld. This story explores the intricate planning, the dangerous execution, and the deadly aftermath of a heist that would leave a lasting mark on history. The Mafia's reign in the 70s. To fully grasp the magnitude of the Lufthansa heist, it's essential to understand the context of the era. In the 1970s, the Mafia wielded unparalleled power in New York. The 5 families, Lucchese, Gambino, Bonanno, Colombo, and Genovese, controlled vast swaths of the city's economy. From drugs to protection rackets, from gambling to loan sharking, nothing happened in New York without the Mafia's blessing. James Burke, also known as Jimmy the Gent, was a notorious gangster affiliated with the Lucchese family. Burke was infamous for his sharp mind and ruthless methods, making him one of the most feared figures in the criminal underworld. His partnership with Henry Hill, a small-time gangster with big ambitions, would prove pivotal in orchestrating one of the most significant heists in history. The insider tip. The Lufthansa heist was set in motion by a simple yet critical piece of information. Henry Hill, deeply entrenched in New York's criminal scene, received a tip from Louis Werner, an employee at Lufthansa. Werner was a man in deep financial trouble, drowning in debt, and desperate for a way out. He knew that the Lufthansa cargo terminal routinely held millions of dollars in cash from overseas flights, waiting to be transferred to banks in Europe. Werner had insider knowledge of the terminal's security measures and the timing of cash deliveries. He knew exactly when the most significant sums of money would arrive and where they would be stored. For James Burke, this information was a goldmine. A heist of this magnitude promised wealth beyond imagination, but Burke also understood the risks. The plan had to be flawless, with no room for error. Planning the heist. The planning for the Lufthansa heist was meticulous and exhaustive. Burke assembled a crew of seasoned criminals, each with a specific skill set, essential for pulling off the heist. Among them was Thomas DeSimone, a violent and unpredictable enforcer known for his willingness to kill without hesitation. Each man was carefully chosen, and Burke ensured that every detail of the plan was covered. The preparation took months. Burke's crew studied the terminal's layout, memorized the security routines, and rehearsed the heist multiple times. There were no phone calls, no written plans. Everything was communicated face-to-face in secure locations to avoid surveillance. The heist was set to take place in the early hours of December 11, 1978, when the terminal would be at its most vulnerable. The night of the heist. In the early hours of December 11, 1978, the plan was put into motion. The men gathered near JFK Airport in the dead of night. At precisely 3:45 a.m., 6 masked men, led by Burke, infiltrated the Lufthansa cargo terminal. Clad in dark clothing and ski masks, they moved swiftly and silently, avoiding detection. The first order of business was neutralizing the guards. The night watchman, unaware of the impending danger, was ambushed with a gun to his head and restrained with zip ties. The gang then forced one of the terminal employees to deactivate the alarm system and silence any potential disturbances. The operation was a delicate balance of speed and stealth. Any slip-up could trigger an alarm and bring the police rushing to the scene. With the employees subdued, the gang began loading bags of cash and jewelry into a waiting van. They worked quickly but carefully, aware that time was not on their side. By the time they were finished, they had stolen approximately $5 million in cash and close to $1 million in jewelry, an enormous sum that would be worth nearly $20 million today. The entire heist took just under an hour, and by 4:45 a.m., the robbers were gone, leaving behind only fear and confusion. The getaway. The getaway was just as crucial as the heist itself. The gang drove away from the terminal in a van, speeding through the deserted streets of New York City as the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon. The money was stashed in a safe house, and the men scattered, taking different routes to avoid detection. They believed they had pulled off the perfect crime, a heist that would go down in history as a masterpiece. However, the aftermath of the heist quickly turned sour. The biggest flaw in the plan was the number of people involved. As paranoia set in, Burke, who feared loose ends could lead to his downfall, began methodically eliminating those who knew too much. Over the next few months, several members of the crew were found dead, victims of mysterious accidents or outright murders that were never solved. The investigation. The news of the Lufthansa heist spread like wildfire, and the pressure on law enforcement to solve the case was immense. The FBI took the lead in the investigation, meticulously piecing together the events of that night. But despite their best efforts, the case remained unsolved for a long time. The gang had covered their tracks well, leaving few clues for the authorities to follow. Louis Werner, the Lufthansa employee whose gambling debts had set the heist in motion, soon came under suspicion. The FBI arrested and interrogated him, and under pressure, Werner confessed to his role in the robbery, implicating several others. However, even with this information, it was difficult to link James Burke directly to the heist. Henry Hill, another key figure, eventually turned state's witness in the early 80s. His testimony led to the conviction of several members of the Lucchese family, including Burke, though not specifically for the Lufthansa heist. Burke was sentenced to prison for other crimes and died behind bars in 1996, never facing justice for his role in the heist. The legacy of the Lufthansa heist. The Lufthansa heist remains one of the most infamous and successful robberies in American history. It's a tale of criminal brilliance overshadowed by the inevitable collapse of trust and loyalty in the criminal underworld. The sheer audacity of the robbery, the meticulous planning, and the brutal aftermath make it a story that continues to fascinate and horrify. The heist has left a lasting mark on popular culture as well. It has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and films, most notably Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas, which dramatizes the events surrounding the heist and its bloody aftermath. The story serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of greed and the ruthless nature of organized crime. Despite the passage of time, the Lufthansa heist remains shrouded in mystery. Many of the stolen millions were never recovered, and the full extent of the Mafia's involvement is still debated. What is clear, however, is that the heist was a turning point, a moment that revealed both the power and the fragility of the criminal empire in New York. The Lufthansa heist of 1978 was more than just a robbery. It was a reflection of a time when the Mafia's influence in New York was at its peak. The robbery itself was the pinnacle of planning and execution, but the aftermath highlighted the treachery and violence that comes with life in the underworld. For the men involved, the heist was supposed to be their ticket to riches, but it became a curse. James Burke, the mastermind, spent his final years in prison, haunted by the ghosts of his past. Henry Hill, who turned on his friends to save himself, lived out his days in the witness protection program, forever looking over his shoulder. The rest of the crew, those who weren't killed, faded into obscurity, their lives forever tainted by that night in December. The story of the Lufthansa heist endures as a powerful narrative about the allure of wealth and the steep price that often comes with it. It's a reminder that in the world of crime, even the best-laid plans can unravel in the face of greed and betrayal. And while the money may have disappeared, the legend of the Lufthansa heist lives on, a cautionary tale of the perils of the criminal life.
Feel free to follow this channel to avoid missing any new content. Disclaimer: the images are AI generated and are for illustration purposes. The stories on this channel are researched to the best of our knowledge.